Detoxing our relationships does not mean we stop caring. Boundaries protect relationships from becoming breeding grounds for resentment. You are allowed to be committed without being consumed. Hey guys, and welcome back to Dr. O's Learning Lab, where we connect human development with human dignity. And I'm Dr. O. I'm here to help you create brain rich, emotionally responsive classrooms where students and teachers can thrive. So, in our last video, we talked about detoxing our expectations. We asked ourselves a few questions. Why is this dysregulation activating my nervous system? Where did this frustration even come from? Am I responding to what actually happened? Or am I responding to an expectation that was never really realistic in the first place? We talked about the expectations that we place on ourselves, on our students, and on our families. And we made it very clear. Adjusting our expectations does not mean abandoning our standards. It doesn't mean children can do whatever they want. It doesn't mean we don't hold people accountable for their actions. But what it does mean is that we stop confusing high expectations with unrealistic, developmentally inappropriate, and unsupported expectations. So today we're taking it another step further, and we are going to be talking about detoxing our relationships. This is the fourth part in our 5-part classroom detox series. We talked about detoxing our language, detoxing our expectations, detoxing our stress response, and now we're talking about detoxing our relationships. And I want to keep this conversation grounded specifically in the relationships that directly affect our school days, our relationships with our students, our relationships with our families, our relationships with our coworkers, and our relationships with our administration. Because sometimes the greatest source of stress in education is not the lesson plan, it's not the curriculum, it's not even the behavior. Sometimes it's the relationships surrounding the work. So, what does it mean to detox a relationship? Now, when I say detoxing a relationship, I am not talking about cutting people off. I'm not talking about cancel culture, and I'm not talking about be blocked, be blessed. Detoxing our relationships does not mean we stop caring. And it also doesn't mean that we have to avoid difficult conversations. And here's the thing, every uncomfortable relationship that you have at work is not a sign that the relationship is actually toxic. So, to detox a relationship simply means we have to examine what has entered that relationship and ask whether it is helping us to connect or is it causing harm. We need to assess if resentment, assumptions, fear, unrealistic expectations, poor boundaries, or unspoken frustrations have entered the relationship. Have we allowed one difficult interaction to shape the way we see that person every single day? Just one. Have we stopped relating to people and are merely reacting to people? So, a relationship detox asks the following question: what am I carrying into this relationship that no longer belongs here? What am I carrying into this relationship that no longer belongs here? Notice, detoxing a relationship doesn't have anything to do with the other person because detox is extremely personal and we can only detox ourselves. Also, notice I didn't say get rid of the other person. I said, what am I carrying into this relationship that no longer belongs here? And so, detoxing our relationships in the classroom begins with our students. We have to remember that students are children before they are learners. They enter the classroom with developing brains, unfinished skills, emotions that they may not know how to name, and life expectations that we may know nothing about. But sometimes, after repeated challenging behavior, we stop seeing the child and we start seeing the problem. We begin describing children by what they do on some of their hardest days. Oh, he's so disrespectful. She's manipulative. He doesn't care. They always want attention. But what if we change the question? Instead of asking, what is wrong with this child? We could ask, what is this child communicating? What is this child trying to communicate? Maybe instead of saying this child is giving me a hard time, we could shift it and say, is this child having a hard time? That shift does not excuse the harmful behavior, but it helps us to understand what may be underneath of that behavior so that we can respond more effectively. Detoxing our relationships with our students means detaching the child's identity from the child's behavior. Listen, the behavior may still need correction, but the child still needs connection. Say it with me. The behavior may still need correction, but the child still needs connection. The behavior may, in fact, be inappropriate, but the child is not disposable. The behavior may frustrate us, but the child still deserves dignity. We have to detox ourselves from taking children's behavior so personally. This is not a personal attack. A child's refusal is not always disrespect. A child's silence is not always defiance. A child's movement is not always a lack of self control. And a child's emotional reaction is not an attempt to ruin your day. Listen, sometimes it's fatigue, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's sensory overload, sometimes they're just learning to develop a particular skill and it, causes some frustration. Sometimes it's a boundary that just needs to be reinforced, but it's not a personal attack. 99.9% of children's behavior has nothing to do with us. We cannot respond wisely if we have already determined that this child is hell bent on ruining our day, that this child is somehow against us. This child is somehow thinking of a way to sabotage our day before they wake up in the morning. Listen, you need to ask yourself, have I become curious about this student or am I just committed to the conclusions that I've made about them? That is a relationship detox question. And that is the question you must begin with in order to detox the relationships that you have with your students, because you do not want to carry preconceived assumptions about student behavior as it relates to you personally in order to have productive relationships with your students. Listen, if you're ready to stop taking student behavior personally and start responding with more curiosity, more connection, more clarity, then you need to join us inside of Dr. O's Learning Lab. This is our school community where we are continuing this conversation, because supporting children should not require you to lose yourself. Oh, so now let's talk about detoxing our relationships with our families. Now, this is an area where assumptions can grow very quickly. We may assume a family doesn't care because they missed a conference, or they didn't return an email, or they didn't answer the phone when we called right away. We may assume that they are not interested in their child's education because they never volunteer, without considering all our volunteer hour opportunities are when most parents are working. We may assume they're irresponsible because they didn't return a field trip form or some type of form that we asked them to fill out and it got lost. So now they're irresponsible. Like you never lost a form. Like you turn in all your paperwork on time. I'm just saying. We may assume that they don't value education or are intellectually inferior to us because they communicate differently from us. But let's be clear here, families are navigating a lot. Okay. Work schedules, transportation, language barriers, caregiving responsibilities, housing instabilities, fear, exhaustion, negative experiences with schools, and a myriad of other things. There is often a story behind what we see. And so, detoxing our relationships with our families means that we stop treating difference like it is dysfunction. A family does not have to communicate like us in order to care deeply about their child. A family doesn't have to show up in the way we prefer in order to be invested. A family does not have to agree with every decision that we make in order to be respected. Listen, we have to be honest about how we are communicating with our families. Do they only hear from us when their child has done something wrong? Is every phone call about negative behavior? Is every message corrective? Do we speak about their child as if their child is a burden that they created for us? Families can feel like we've already made up our minds about them. And so, one of the most powerful ways to detox a family relationship is to begin again with something truthful and something positive. This is not fake praise. This is not avoiding concerns, but this is allowing our families to know that we see their whole child. It may sound something like this: your child has such a strong sense of curiosity. I noticed how kind your child was to another child today. Listen, I want us to work together because I believe your child can be really successful. These simple phrases can change the relationship that you have with your families. Why? Because we're no longer standing on opposite sides of the problem. We're both standing on the same side of the child. I want what's best for your child. I know and believe you want what's best for your child. So, how can we work together to give the best to the child. Again, detoxing our relationships with our families means getting rid of the assumptions and the negative biases that we have created about our families because of maybe one or two experiences that we've had with them or with their children. We cannot carry that into next year in order to have a successful year and successful relationships with our families. If partnering with families sometimes feels harder than it should, then come join us inside of Dr. O's Learning Lab. We are learning how to replace assumptions with understanding while still communicating concerns clearly and protecting those healthy boundaries. Oh, now let's talk about our coworkers. Your coworkers are not your friends. Unless they have earned that right, your coworkers are not your friends. This is not high school. School relationships can become really complicated because we work in environments where everyone is tired, everyone is responsible for something, and everyone may feel that their work is not fully seen. And because of that, resentment can grow quietly. You may feel like, I always help out. He ain't doing nothing. She ain't doing nothing. You may feel like I'm the only one who actually does something in this school. You may feel like your coworkers complain constantly. You may feel excluded. You may feel judged. You may feel like someone receives all the opportunities that you deserve. And so, because we have these feelings, we can tend to click up with people who feel the way we do. And then we create these factions within the school building and we get together and it becomes toxic because we have these pockets of people spreading negativity about the other people that they are working with. And to me, that sounds like high school. This is not high school. And here's the thing, your feelings are very valid, but relationship detox with our coworkers requires us to ask this question. Are we addressing the issues or are we feeding the frustration by creating click environments where we breed negativity amongst each other and spread it throughout the whole building? Do we have necessary conversations with the people who we may feel a certain type of way with? Or do we not have those conversations and instead just gossip about them in our little clique? Are you repeating the negative interaction that made you feel a certain type of way with everybody else in the building except for the person? Are you failing to set boundaries and then getting mad because everybody continues to treat you in a way that you don't like? But you continue to let them without speaking up, but then you get upset. You say yes, but then you become resentful and then blame the other person for not reading your mind. Are you responding to your coworkers in the moment, like what happened today? Or are you reacting to 5 years of unresolved frustration? Like that happened between you and your coworker school year 21-22, and we about to go into school year 26-27. And every time they ask you like, "Hey, can we collab on this?" You don't respond to this current collaboration or this current request. You bring in 21-22's drama. You need a detox. Detoxing your relationships with your coworkers is not about becoming bestie westies with everybody because like I already said, your coworkers are not your friends. You don't have to eat lunch together. You don't have to go to happy hour. You don't have to share your personal life stories. You don't have to pretend that there's a trust between you that was never built. But here's what you can be: you can still be professional, you can still be clear, you can still be respectful, and you can still have boundaries. So here's what a detoxed relationship with your coworkers sounds like. I'm not able to do that right now. Listen, I want to support you in this thing that you're doing, but I'm going to need more notice. So when that happened yesterday in the teacher's lounge, I felt dismissed. When you have a moment, can we just talk about it? I think there may have been a misunderstanding. I just want to clear it up. So this conversation makes me uncomfortable, so I'm not going to participate in it. I don't want to go to happy hour when I get off of work. I really just want to go home and be with my family. Or I just want to go home and be by myself. Clear is kind. Boundaries protect relationships from becoming breeding grounds for resentment. And when resentment grows and gossip is practiced instead of grace, the classroom, the school, the culture becomes a toxic environment that nobody wants to work in. If coworker tension, resentment, or unclear boundaries are making your school day heavier, you do not need to keep navigating this alone. Join us in our school community where we are having honest conversations about staying professional, protecting our peace, and communicating clearly. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about detoxing our relationships with our administrators. Now, this one can be difficult because there is a power dynamic at play, and educators can feel unsupported and overworked and unheard, or constantly being asked to do more with less. And you may feel like you don't have a voice because this is your administrator. You may feel like your administration is adding expectations without providing the resources that you need. You may feel like the decisions that are being made by people who don't even understand what's happening inside of your classroom. You may feel like your concerns are just dismissed until they actually become emergencies. When it comes to detoxing our relationships with our administrators, the first thing you need to understand is you cannot ignore unfairness. You cannot remain silent. You cannot pretend that harmful leadership is acceptable. This means we have to become intentional about how we are advocating for ourselves. So instead of carrying frustration until we explode, we document, we ask for clarity, we request the support verbally and in writing. We communicate our needs with specificity. We separate what is inconvenient from what is unsustainable. I remember one particular story where administration was asking our team to do something that was just completely beyond the scope of what the five of us teachers had the capacity to do. And we had a meeting about it, and we decided collectively as a team that we would let administration know that this is just, we would just not be able to do it. Like, we talked about it, we looked at it, it was just completely unrealistic, and it didn't really fit within the scope of our lesson plans, our curriculum, and the things that we were already requested to do. So it was something that was asked of us on top of everything else. And so we made a plan, and we said at our next administration meeting, we're going to tell administration, "Hey, this is not going to work for us. Um, can you give us some other suggestions?" Well, when we got to the meeting with the administrators started out with said project, about how excited they were about said project, about how they already talked to the district about the project that the fifth grade was going to be doing, and how we already talked about the project that our grade was going to be doing, and how they were just so excited about it, and rah, 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 shish kumbah. And what do you think? So instead of us sticking together and saying to administration, "We appreciate your enthusiasm, but we cannot complete this project within this calendar year." Guess what my team leader and the other two teachers did? They said, "Yeah, we can do it. We got it. We're excited about it." Come on, say what? And so I was the only one that respectfully spoke up and said, "We cannot complete this project. We just don't have enough time." And everybody in that meeting was like, "No, it's okay. We can do this. It's not a problem." Blah, 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 blah. And then proceeded to try to kill themselves to complete said project. I just took a bad review. I just took a bad review, and I said, and I documented, we said that this was going to be too much. We are not able to complete this, and this is going to require blah, 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 which is outside of my contracted hours. We're not being compensated for this. I will not be participating. Did I look like a bad teacher? Absolutely. Did I protect my peace? I absolutely did. Because what we not going to do is kowtow to unrealistic expectations from administration who failed to give us support. And what else we not going to do is not speak up as if they're somehow our masters and we're some slaves. That ain't how this works. Now, notice, I didn't say we can't complete the project. I said we can't complete it within the calendar year. And unless they were going to take some of the other stuff off of our plate, this was going to require a lot of nights after work hours completing a project that we were not being compensated for. And me saying no doesn't mean that I don't care. It means I'm protecting my peace, and I refuse to sacrifice myself on the altar of my administrator's unrealistic expectations. This is not disrespect. This is professional communication. And sometimes our relationship detox when it comes to our administration is internal. We got to get rid of the mentality that says, in order to be a good educator, we must accept every request, solve every problem, attend every event administration asks us to attend, answer every message immediately, and sacrifice every personal need at the whim of our administration. You are allowed to be committed without being consumed. You are allowed to care deeply without carrying everything. So listen, if you are trying to advocate for yourself without being labeled difficult, disrespectful, or uncommitted, our school community is the place for you. I want you to join me inside of Dr. O's Learning Lab as we learn how to communicate our needs, protect our capacity, and remain committed without being consumed. So, detoxing our relationships begins with the stories that we are telling ourselves. The student roll their eyes and the story becomes, they don't respect me. A parent doesn't respond and the story becomes, they don't care. The coworker didn't speak and the story becomes, they have a problem with me. The administrator requests a meeting and the story becomes, I'm in trouble. Listen, sometimes the story is true, but more often than not, fear is filling in the missing information. So, before reacting, let's ask, what do I know? What am I assuming? What conversations need to happen? We can create unnecessary conflict when we respond to assumptions as if they are confirmed facts. Relationships need boundaries and they also need repair. So, in order to have healthy relationships at school, you need to have boundaries and repair. Boundaries tell people how we can work together respectfully. And repair helps us to connect when something has gone wrong. Repair can sound like, you know what, I didn't respond well earlier. Can I try that conversation again? Or, I misunderstood what you meant. You know what? I shouldn't have spoken to you in that way. My bad. Listen, I'm still concerned, but I really want to find a solution. Remember, repair does not erase accountability. It actually allows accountability and dignity to exist together. Listen, as educators, we teach our children how to apologize, how to listen, how to solve problems, how to try again. So we have to model that in our adult relationships as well. So as you think about your school relationships, I want you to ask yourself, who do I immediately become tense around? What assumptions have I made about that person? What boundary have I failed to communicate? And what conversations have I been avoiding? Also, am I responding to this person or am I responding to my history with this person or with the people who they remind me of? Where is repair needed in your relationships? Your relationships with your students, your coworkers, your families, and your administration. Where do you need to release responsibility for fixing those relationships? Because detoxing does not mean taking full responsibility for everyone's behavior. You can communicate clearly. You can lead with dignity. You can offer repair. You can set a boundary, but you cannot do the relational work for two people. Listen, the goal of detoxing our relationships is not perfection. Schools are filled with human beings, and human beings are complicated, to say the least. The goal is to build healthier relationships, relationships where students are corrected without being shamed, relationships where families are treated as partners and not problems, relationships where coworkers can communicate without resentment, relationships where educators can advocate for themselves without feeling guilty for having needs. Because emotionally responsive classrooms cannot be built through curriculum alone. They are built through relationships. And those relationships should not require educators to abandon themselves in order to maintain peace. If this conversation is hitting home, then I want you to join us inside of our school community where we are going to be continuing this classroom detox conversation. This is not about learning how to manage children, but it's about helping educators breathe again, how to think clearly, how to set healthy boundaries, how to create classroom environments that do not require us to disappear in order to be effective. This is a community where we can keep these types of conversations going. Why? Because conversations are catalysts for change. And I'll see you next time where we will conclude our Classroom Detox series with part 5. This is detoxing the classroom environment. Yes, we're finally getting to the stuff that you need to get rid of. Yes, those lesson plans you had in the dark ages. I can't wait to see you inside the school community. Make sure you click the link below to join us. We cannot wait to continue this conversation with you.